Another year, another Clash Royale controversy, am I right? Feels like there's never been a year in Clash Royale history where there wasn't some big uprising against an issue. For example, in 2016, there were many, from muting emotes to insanely expensive tournaments that felt unfair. But probably the biggest and longest controversy of 2016 was legendaries. In late February of 2016, the first two legendaries were added to Clash Royale. Though there was big hype about this new rarity, there were already complaints that they felt impossible to get. And part of this was intentional because they were legendary after all, they're supposed to be hard to pull. That's part of the reason they're legendary. But the reason this made players upset was because not only were they stupid OP, but players could drop boatloads of money on the biggest chest to get them. Basically, what players were getting from this 2-month-old game was that money equaled skill, because you could buy the best cards. This was the perfect recipe for the first pay-to-win controversy, and for the remainder of 2016, Supercell worked really hard to fix this pay-to-win notion, especially how the game was brand new and they wanted it to live on. And believe it or not, they pulled through, well, at least at the time. By the end of 2016, legendaries were much more balanced and fair, and their drop rates were significantly higher than that of the beginning of the year. Many other changes made them more accessible as well, like the addition of the legendary chests, which guaranteed a legendary. You could finally buy them with gold instead of having to empty out your bank on chests, and you could unlock them for free in challenges, among many other changes that practically put an end to this pay-to-win belief. All of these changes allowed 2017 to be one of the greatest years in Clash Royale history. So what could have possibly gone wrong that year? Well, 2017 had some small controversies here and there, like how Touchdown was overhyped and how 2v2 was bad for the game or something. I don't know, I was too busy playing 2v2 to care. But the biggest controversies this year had to do with balancing. Though there were many cards that were OP, nothing compares to the Elite Barbarian and Royal Giant meta. The problem was that these two cards were common and very OP, so everyone and their mama was running Royal Giant or E-Barbs. Or both. And not only were they easily accessible and strong, they were part of the first cards to be labeled as no skill. You drop them and they just work. They were an absolute pain in the butt to counter, and it felt like they guaranteed some significant damage to the opponent's push or their tower with minimal effort. And the reason I believe this was more significant than other cards in 2017 is because these just went on for longer. These cards were nerfed and reworked multiple times, and even months and over a year later they were still being called OP. In fact, it went on for so long that it became a meme, landing a spot in the loading screen hints and 2v2 chats. But balancing aside, at the end of the day, these balancing issues didn't really impact the game all that much, and the year would end off better than most years. Everyone was very optimistic on what 2018 would bring to the table. With that said, 2018 has to be the least controversial year in Clash Royale history. I'm only going to be picking something just because I'm discussing every year, but believe me, there wasn't much to pick from, so I'll be quick. The most controversial change seems to be the removal of clan chests. This happened during the addition of Clan Wars, which was great, but players argue that why remove it? This is one of the most casual features in the game. What's the purpose? The clan chest was seen as a low stress, casual, and fun way for you and your clan to earn rewards. And for a lot of players, it was the one thing they looked forward to the most. But like I said, nothing in 2018 was that significant. I would say that players eventually forgot about it in between the many great things that happened this year, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But I was part of that group of people that really missed the clan chest for a while. 2019 was also a decent year, but it had its controversial moments. The biggest one being the addition of Clash Royale. Now, just because something was controversial doesn't mean everyone was opposed to it. Clash Royale used to be known as one of the greatest bang for your bucks. It was actually an awesome deal. However, the community seems split on whether a season pass was good for the game's future or not. And this happens with every game, it happened to Clash of Clans. There are going to be those who see the season passes as a win-win for both the developer and the player, and then there are going to be those who totally oppose it because literally every game was turning into a monthly cash grab after Fortnite's success. But there were also other reasons players disliked the addition of Clash Royale. For example, the fact that it included unlimited tries and continues on challenges for pass buyers only. And a chess cube, something that the community had asked for a while. Many felt the decision to include these awesome quality of life features behind a paywall was a slap in the face to the free-to-play community. The end of an era. Now, 2020 was not a good year for Clash Royale or any of us. The community was very excited for what the next update would bring to the table, but only 9 months later, the hashtag #NoPassSeptember would trend on social media. So what went wrong? Well, Clan Wars 2.0, the most anticipated update of the year, was teased in February 2020.
A little sneak peek of something big we're working on this year.
But due to delays and other reasons, it wouldn't come out until the very last day of August. They said it was coming out in August, and technically, it did. This meant that over half of the year started out with just past Royale seasons, which quickly got really boring and disappointing. Naturally, this big gap overhyped whatever was to come, and because developers insisted the pandemic was not slowing them down whatsoever, everyone thought, wow, whatever they're cooking for this long has to be one of the greatest updates of all time. Unfortunately, Clan Wars 2.0 was everything but that. If I could summarize it in a few words based on community feedback, it was slow, boring, limited, not free-to-play friendly, and poorly designed. It was also riddled with bugs and oversights that made you wonder, how did this ever make it past testing? Players were also upset about the removal of quests, which was done because Clan Wars 2.0 was going to give you way more rewards. But as it would turn out, that wasn't entirely accurate. Things were so bad that the community manager would apologize shortly after the update for not listening to the community enough. This is where the hashtag #NoPassSeptember came from. Players were incredibly upset at Supercell for not listening to what players actually wanted, and because certain aspects of Clan Wars 2.0 felt pay to win, past Royale would be boycotted for the next several months. 2021 was generally a way better year than 2020, even though it had its fair share of controversies like unfair champion balancing and the addition of new card levels. But the biggest is undoubtedly Clash Royale. It slashed everyone's hope in the game. Sorry. Clash Royale in Clash Royale is what Hammer Jam is to Clash of Clans. 50% off all card upgrades and a big amount of gold that you could win from battles known as the Great Gold Rush. The 2021 Clash Royale was the first of its kind, and it kicked off on the 18th of October. Everything was going great. I mean, everything is half off and there's a lot of gold going around. What could go wrong? Now, traditionally in Clash of Clans, players are aware that a Hammer Jam is what comes before a new Town Hall level. So you would think that level 14 was a no-brainer. How could you not see that coming? But it wasn't, because the team had expressed before many times that a new card level would never happen. So everyone saw this event as the perfect opportunity to finally max their account. However, level 14 was announced about a week into Clash Royale, and players were not happy. That's an understatement. The problem was that everyone had spent countless hours grinding battles and upgrading cards, using up all of their gold, only to find out that there was a new level coming. It felt that Supercell had tricked everyone into spending all their resources and leaving them with nothing when the update drops. To make matters worse, at some card levels, you were actually losing gold upgrading them during Clash Royale, because it was announced that these levels would be cheaper after the update. All of this felt like an intentional scam, or a deliberate way to get more money out of the players. And understandably, the community was very disappointed. Supercell tried to ease some of the backlash, explaining that it was unintentional and they would compensate all players with extra cards toward their progress. Not everyone was happy of the end result, but things could have been much worse. 2022 was a surprisingly great year, and some say it was like a small revival. So with that said, much like 2017 and 2018, there isn't a major controversy, and a lot of it had to do with card balancing, like the good old days. The worst of it was the Monk and Phoenix. Right off the bat, these cards were absolutely busted, and this is rarely ever good for the game, especially when people have this notion that it being done intentionally so that players buy into it and they can nerf it later when they cashed in and with all the players' money, you know? But this was especially true with the Monk, because unlike previous champion launches where you had to meet the unlock requirements in order to buy it or unlock it, the Monk was available at any arena for 30 bucks. To no one's surprise, this was incredibly unfair. I mean, imagine being in Arena 3 playing your giant and archers, and your opponent whips out a monk. For many, this was further proof that once again, Supercell prioritizes profit over the game's balancing and fairness. This certainly wasn't the first time where players claimed pay to win, but at the time, it was certainly one of the best examples of how greed can ruin a game. 2023 was another one of those years that started out with a bang, but not the good kind. There were many controversies I could have talked about, like the Masteries nerf, evolutions, and level 15. But I believe the biggest one had to be the update for losers, as it impacted everyone, not just, max players and whatnot. The update for losers had a lot of controversial changes within itself, one of the main ones being the pass rework. There were now 3 tiers, a free side, gold, and diamond, and this wouldn't have been that big of an issue if it wasn't for the fact that the free and gold track had been significantly nerfed. Like, they removed the Royal Wild Chest and book from the free side, and the magic coin and book of books from the gold track. For some people, that's the only reason they bought it, all while costing $1 more. And then the new Diamond Pass, valued at $12, was clearly the better choice that Supercell wanted you to buy. And it even offered a free champion for any player, whereas before you needed to be level 14 to unlock them. It felt like once again Supercell was prioritizing revenue over fairness. But that wasn't all. The party tab was removed, and so was the ability to get chests and crowns from any game mode but Trophy Road and Path of Legends. The casual game modes like 2v2, for example, now only gave you season tokens. That's it. Now, initially, this didn't seem like such a terrible move, as you could spend those tokens on a brand new season shop, and while the season shop was supposed to bring some of those remove rewards back for free, all the good items required a lot of grinding, and the tokens were capped at 1,000 a day. The amount of grinding required after the update was absolutely insane. Like, nobody wants to be on Clash Royale for hours a day. There were also other changes that I haven't even touched on, but essentially, players felt Supercell was nerfing progression and rewarding grinding and pass buyers, especially those who were going to purchase the new $12 pass. Though Supercell did make several changes in order to fix some of the update pain points, like adding crowns back to any game mode and being incredibly generous with tokens you could earn from challenges. For many, this update was the last straw, and unfortunately the game did not get any better throughout the year. 2024 was surprisingly not that bad, with many changes that felt good for the first time in a while. The Pass Royale rework and lucky drops were received well, free-to-play progression was improved, and just about the only thing that wasn't good was the overall balancing of the game. Evolutions just felt too strong and, pay to win, blah blah blah. The usual complaints. But updates aside, the most controversial thing of 2024 was the lucky drop glitch. There was this glitch where you went offline before opening a box, checking what you got, and if you didn't like it, you could restart the process over and over until you got the reward you wanted, and then turned your signal back on. Now, even though this was clearly against the terms of service, that didn't stop the exploit from spreading like wildfire. Thousands of players, including top leaderboard players and content creators, were caught up in this exploit, and many of them would get banned. Even though players assumed that if they were caught, Supercell would start banning players, no one was expecting them to hand out those lifetime permanent bans. This was especially controversial because it felt Supercell was picking and choosing when and what to ban for, and only doing so this time around because it hurt their wallet. Meanwhile, many players were win trading and abusing other glitches with no repercussions. But even more so was the controversial opinion of whether a lifetime ban was even justified. The community was split on which side they picked, but it's kind of one of those situations where if you just had stayed away from the fire, perhaps you wouldn't have got burnt. But I do have to agree on the unfairness of them choosing to ban for this and not other things. And finally, we're at the current year, 2025. It's not a complete year by any means, but the pot is already stirring. Like many past controversies, this one centers around an update. In March 31st, 2025, a set of changes were announced. Everyone thought it was April Fool's because the day that came after, but no. One of the main changes being the removal of chests. Instead, the main way to get things now was from lucky drops, which you could only attain 3 of daily. And you couldn't get these from casual modes either, like 2v2. It felt like the update for losers all over again. Then there was the removal of the season shop and even daily quests. This would supposedly inject more rewards into other areas of the game, but speaking of, the season pass was also majorly nerfed for both the free and pay track, essentially removing all of the good rewards and only adding 1 shard. Not even players paying $12 for a pass were safe. All of these changes amounted to a massive nerf to progression across the board. According to Row API, progression was cut in half for free-to-play players, making it incredibly difficult to progress compared to before. Now, it seems the team was hoping this update would simplify the game in a way where you don't need to grind for chests and season tokens. No, we're gonna remove everything and just have a 1 reward system, And I guess that would have been okay if it wasn't for progression being sliced in half. This update has already been regarded as the worst update in Clash Royale history, though I don't know how many times I've heard that before, so you be the judge of that. I do know one thing though, that it's certainly a major step back compared to how great 2024 was. But yeah, that is every year in Clash Royale history. As you may have noticed in a lot of these controversies, they're focused around updates. It's just the nature of Clash Royale, I guess. With that said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, but hey, before you go, YouTube thinks you'll like this next video, so why don't you check it out. As always, have a good me outs. Peace!